Good evening, folks. Gonna do kind of some of our same typical stuff. But of course, first off, we got to sharpen some tools. Sharpen a bowl gouges. It's probably the only thing I need to sharpen, I think. And maybe a little bit on our scraper. That's just a little setup block. That's from Glenn Lucas over in the UK, or Ireland. Doesn't look like that's quite the right angle. Why not? Would be. Nope. Didn't have it quite up against the wheel. Easiest to put it on the wheel, bring it down to that, bring the rest up. Just save me a little bit of extra grinding. This is the bowl scraper. This is a thick chunk. So we're still really working on getting the shape right. And take more of that corner away. Make it more rounded than what it is. Oh, looks a little better, a little different maybe. Somehow or another, I think I had that one set differently. Oh no. I sharpened that over at Woodcraft, I think. And theirs was set different than mine. I'll just put it back to mine. Kind of a lot of material to remove on a 350 grit wheel, but it worked. Gonna get it a little warm. This is kind of a tool that I really don't care whether it gets a little warm. Really just trying to use up the last little bit. And I'm gonna use that round bar for something else. The original intent is to make it into a little bit of a small skew, something like that. Maybe 40 degrees sharpened up. Key is don't let them get too dull. When they get super dull, then you got to pay attention a little bit more. This one's also getting short. So it's beyond, it's not quite beyond the flute yet. Getting there though. And we can go make a little bit of dirt. Maybe 1 short second, we'll move back over here on the camera. Place smells like a cedar tree. I turned a piece of cedar the other night. Not something I don't too often get a hold of. Oh, shit. I had it backwards anyhow. Never mind. My apologies. Close some things up, see what we're doing. That looks like it'll work. So, which one do we start with? The ash one. I have a couple small little bowls that we're going to do. Trying to get some stuff out of the road. These couple pieces here have been around long enough that they're going to be a turn to finish kind of a thing. Drive center. Now what? This is going to be a flat rim bowl because this stuff down here is kind of punky. So I'm not gonna make it into a natural edge. So I do the flat rim ones a little bit different than some people. That edge is closer than that edge. It needs to move. I'm still going to move it around just a little bit to try and make this bottom flatter than, or as flat as I possibly can to start with. That looks all right. Even though it's what I would call semi-dry, maybe damp wood, I usually try and wrap them a little bit or at least seal the ends or something or other, because that's when they want to crack like this. It does have a little bit of spalting in it. See what it looks like once we get some material removed. Everything's clear. Speed down. Let's see, I need to change one of the cameras because it's in too close. There we go. I'm going to say it takes a second for it to catch up. Like I should have cleaned my face shield, but we'll be all right. Little dust never hurt anybody. And a little closer overhead. All right. Now we're sort of ready. This size bowls are usually pretty quick to do because they're small. I'm just going to clean up the safe. As we remove material, it may get out of balance, which it actually did. It started to vibrate. But now we need a tenon in there. Since we use the big one, might as well use the big ones. More grip strength. What I'll do, I'll put a tenon in there, on there, and I'll flip it right back, flip it around right away. And then I'll have total access to the bottom right from the very start. Which makes it, in my opinion, makes it really simple to do. It would be almost like starting, if you're somebody that used like face plates or things like that, it'd be basically the same scenario. We can certainly can bring the tailstock back up for a little bit to do it this way, and I probably will because this one actually is cut, just kind of cut the corners off. And a little extra support will never hurt anybody. Always want to work safely. Last little flick locks it in place. All straight up and down. Wood grain is going straight up and down. You see a little crack. It's just a small one, but a crack nonetheless. And we'll have to keep an eye on that. We probably should give it a little markage on the back where it's at. So we are not hunting for it. Like I said, we can bring the tailstock back up for the moment. And I'll sort of go after it even this in the same way that I would if it was a little bit more round. I just go right straight to the corner, get rid of this corner, and then we'll go from there. That corner is actually where the vibration's coming from because it's uneven. We want to get a couple cuts before we have to move the tool rest. We may end up turning the dust collector on because this is ash and it, like I say, it's pretty dry. So it will be dusty, probably. Not quite there yet, but it's getting close. So let's just get rid of the tailstock. Much easier. Less things in the road. Always give it that spin to make sure that nothing's going to hit. Now we've gotten rid of the corner, we've gotten rid of the out of balance part. So now we can back and work on this. I know some of that's sort of soft and punky. It doesn't really feel that too terribly bad. But I gotta get down a little bit more because when I drilled the hole, I wasn't necessarily thinking properly there because there's still a hole in the drill bit. I don't want that in my foot. So I think I made it 7. Still a little hole there. Couldn't see that little hole in the thing. Pretty much gone. The rest of it will go away. Let's get rid of the rest of the corner. Yeah. Dust collector's got to come on. And keep it somewhat out of the road. Yeah. Doing some other stuff, so I got to go over here and close some gates, open some other gates. I do have a bottle of water. The only problem with that's the real problem when you work with dry wood. It can be very dusty. But of course, then you don't have to wait for it to dry, which seems to be an issue for lots of people. Little wormhole, still not quite round. Probably another cut or two. A little crack there. That's probably, yeah, that's the one I had marked. So we are going to lose a little bit on the top. Still a little bit, but that's probably about how much we're going to have to remove, I think. So if I use the same chuck, it's kind of a a little bit big of a foot. I'm going to reduce that a little bit because I know I have it set where I have it set a little bit, just a shade too big. What I want to be able to do is basically make a tenon down here, be able to grab a hold of that tenon without putting a bunch of marks on it. That way this will become the foot as well. Also kind of a tough place to get into. Right there. I can get into it with the bowl gouge, but when you're starting to play with these scrapers, it's kind of an easier place just to sneak in there with the scraper a little bit, and it'll be nice and clean. I'll raise that tool rest just a shade high. That just gives it a nice simple foot. We're going to grab it with that, and hopefully we don't put too big of marks in it. A couple little ridges there. They would stand out, but it's like one of them deals of you can use a tool to do the job of sandpaper, and you might as well do it. Just to make life a little bit easier. Now we probably should come back up here. I thought I trued that edge up pretty good, but I didn't. There's still some chainsaw marks there. And it would probably be a pretty plain bowl if I just did nothing up here. So we'll clean it up. And now we definitely don't want to touch that edge. That's even try and touch anything while spinning like that. Because it is very, very sharp. I lost the mark where my crack was at. Looks like right there's the mark. Still a little bit of that crack in there showing, so I think I'm going to go down just a little bit more. Put another eighth of an inch down. Or thereabouts. Knock the razor blade edge off. How are you this evening? Not too bad. I think we'll just put a bead, maybe two beads. Yes. Generally, it's not going to be ash though. Ash can sort of tear the grain a little bit more. And if I was going to do the entire bowl in beads, I would actually use the beading tool. That way, I would have very uniform and even beads. Yes, you can do the like the basket of illusion type bowl. Um, I do not, because I think it's the one that I did was is gone. Because I do the turning part of it, and then I sort of turn it over to my wife. She's the one that has the patience to sit there and color all those little blocks in. It's not my kind of thing, so I leave that kind of thing to her. And I think I'm not really totally sure where it went. Some of the craft shows that we do like to have a maybe a bit of a donation or something or other. Actually, some of them around here actually will give you a little bit of a discount or something. I think is what it was. And it had been around for quite some time. It wasn't, I don't know, it was kind of wasn't my, ended up kind of not being my thing of what I wanted to do with it. So I'm pretty sure that it actually got donated. Oops, sorry. I think it got donated to somebody, one of the craft shows, one of those people. Easiest time to stand a foot, or at least the bottom of the foot. Maybe knock that sharp edge off a little bit. And get in there right up against the foot. Burn the speed down, burn the fingers. Maybe go in reverse and all the dirt will go right straight into the old trusty chute. These beads a little bit of a sand. And we can sort of power sand in between all that stuff. Probably could actually burn a line in there too. Might give it a little different look. Just run through some of the sandpaper. Actually, when it comes right down to it, this piece is small enough. Might be just as easy to sand it by hand. Especially once I got a detail up here. A little bit of an area down here though that's need a little bit more attention. Just a tiny bit of a hump there. Get rid of that. So I'm backing grits back to 180. I'll go back to our 220. $320. Still in cut new. You have some 600 to go between 4 and 8, but I even cut some sandpaper earlier, and I'm about to go look, and I didn't. Especially when we're sanding with sheet paper, much less forgiving. It's going to show more of the scratch lines. There was the 600 non-short second. Just switch back and go the other direction. The last two grits. Which will be 600 and a little bit of 800. That's good. A little bit of scratch lines out there, but I'll get that before I finish it. So I can get a little bit of it right now. It may or may not show in the final piece. a little random orbit sanding. It's right on the end grain, which of course is where the scratches will most likely be. A little bit on both ends. Just blends them in. You know, it doesn't look like I'm doing much. Get rid of a little white line right there. It's smooth to the touch, but it's going to show up. And now we'll see whether we got this tenant the right size. We got it too small now. Oh yeah, almost too small. So the chuck's almost totally closed. That should leave 0 marks. It's a little bit further closed than what it needs to be though. I'll move this dust collection hose. Now it's about there. Locks it a little bit, but you still see pretty much see. Because I know right from here it's gonna go. If I go to there, then it's gonna pretty much go right straight in. So going forward, we're already slow for sanding, and then we'll bring our speed back up to turning speed. Running pretty much true, so we're good there. Have to get rid of a little bit of stuff here. This shade low. Sort of a force of habit that I continue to make things go in stages because I'm used to doing it that way. I'll come up and around this corner over. So it makes it sort of a total bead at the top. This will be fairly thin, down to about somewhere between 3/8 and a quarter. Got the cut right where I left off. I'm actually going to have to switch to the other guy. That's the short one. So I think I'm going to be, that was the 40-degree gouge that I was using. It will give a nice, super clean cut down, going down the sides. But once we get close to the bottom, I can't make the curve with that one. It doesn't work so well for that. So I'll go back to the traditional swept back grind. Shouldn't be sticking my fingers in there while it's spinning either. Just wanted to make sure it kind of had a sound like it was a little bit thin right there, but it's not. It's actually getting thicker. It always pays to stop and take a peek. Measuring is free. As long as they fly in the right direction, it's satisfying. I don't have quite the curve that I want. I wanted to stop and check. I got to come back up in here and try and readjust a little bit. Although I did sharpen the big scraper radius. I'll try it once. Kind of a Probably not a good time to be experimenting, so to speak. Not to mention, it has an 80 grit wheel, CBN wheel that it was sharpened on. It's got a big hairy burr on it. I don't think it's, well, it might let me go around that corner a little bit. There is some ridges in there. Very, very gentle touch, which is is a very hard thing to teach. Because now that we've sort of gotten involved in this teaching thing, some of this stuff is really hard to teach. I was teaching a guy the last class that I helped with. I had him put his fingers on the outside of the bowl, and I gave him a negative rake scraper. That's a traditional one, because I knew this one here, it's got to be at a slight downward angle, or it will if it goes upwards, it'll grab a hold of that edge and won't release until it gets back to the negative angle, and it takes a huge chunk out when it does that. But I had him put his fingers on the outside because the bowl is about this thick, so you can't put any real pressure on it, or it'll vibrate and chatter and carry on. So I had him put his fingers on the outside of it, and I said, so if your fingers get hot, that means you're putting way too much pressure on it. There's some ridges up here that I'd like to get rid of. This is a negative rake one. So if I put my fingers on the outside, just to kind of give it a little bit of support, now there's a little chatter up there at the edge, so I can't get my finger up there. Not necessarily the best way to make your shape right in some ways, but it's really kind of what works best for you and makes your work a little easier, a little quicker maybe. That's kind of the way I look at it. If it makes my job easier to get to the same end result, then that's what I'm going to do with it. We'll give that a sand. Even though it looks like a pretty clean surface, there's still a little bit of grain that it sort of picks up as the end ready growing across the side grain. So I'll still start with 120 grit sandpaper just to make sure that I don't have any surprises. And there still could be some full marks in there that need to be gotten rid of. Well, if I can finish shaping that last little bit of that bead up there. Get a paintbrush and clean it off. We're always looking at the end grain, because if anything's going to be out of whack, that's where it's going to be. It's all right. Just lovely 120 grit scratches, but can be expected. So now we can just proceed on. That was 150. Go to 180. At 180, then we're going to stop and take another look and make sure those 120 grit scratches are gone. It looks like there could be just a little bit right there. Like I said, always be on that pesky little end grain. Always be on the right side of the end grain as well. I think that'll do it. On to 320. There's just a little bit right there by hand. It looks like my bead's sort of getting pointy. This is 400. Probably going to go back and touch that bead up with a little bit of hand sandpaper. That was the 600. Lastly, we'll go to 800. This will pretty much give it almost like a polished like surface. I'm going to hit this bead just a little bit here. Can't get in there with the big sandpaper or the big sander. That's just 800. It's just starting to get like a little bit of a crown or something on it. Clean the dust out of there. Simple paper towel does wonders. I'll do the same thing on the outside because now I turn the noise maker off. Go back. See whether this left marks. It shouldn't have because there's no points. Nope. So that's what you call almost a perfect 10. So that's basically a finished piece. All you gotta do is put the actual finish on. I gotta switch chucks to hold the last little piece. So we'll basically put it back in between, sort of in between centers to finish it. And at this point, it doesn't need to be perfectly centered as well, because I really don't have any markings to show me where center's at. And like I say, it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to spin it. I'm only going to spin it by hand. I should put a paper towel in there though, or two, just in case that rubber. Actually, it is fairly thin. Get a piece of wax paper because I'm going to use my normal finish, which will be the slow setting CA glue. Ash is porous. I swear I can never tear this stupid stuff. Good thing it's dirt cheap. So we'll put that over paper towels. That over there. Bring up our tailstock somewhere in the center. Doesn't, like I say, it doesn't need to spin true or any even close to being true, because it doesn't need to. We're going to use a paper towel. We're going to wipe it off. Try and get any of the excess dirt out of there. Not that it totally matters, but it just makes the next step sort of easier. There's no dust in there. Get a clean globe. I'll have to show you the other piece then that I did on Wednesday evening. There's a wood turning group called right here, the Worldwide Wood Turners. They meet every Wednesday night on Zoom. And I usually come down here and then fire up this computer unless I get home really late from work. And I usually try and do a little bit of my own work while I'm watching / listening to the demo. If it's something that's really, really interesting to me, then I will generally actually watch it. The other night was doing some of the offset turning, the baseball bat with the ball inside of the bat that looks crooked. I mean, I think they look neat when they're done. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it takes a lot of patience and a bit of know-how to do them, but they're just not something that has jumped out at me. Here's what we're going to use: the Parfix 3408. Like I say, slow setting CA glue. One coat. There's a little piece of polyester felt in this paper towel. Acts as my reservoir. And we're going to have beads that you're not going to be able to get down into, as well as the foot. Show you the simple solution to that. Going to put a nice liberal coat on. Want it to saturate it as best as I can. So we'll actually go over this a couple times. The really simple way of doing the bead, or the inside of that bead, is literally just take it. In this case, it's going to have to go almost the whole way around. The foot probably only a little ways around. We'll do the foot, maybe not. And now they're taken care of. Plenty on there. Come back over the rest again. You know when you get it saturated, when it starts to sit on the surface and not go anywhere? Which is pretty much where it's at right now. Oh, there's a little spot that got missed in the bead. Maybe another little spot. That was probably, unfortunately too, that's probably a little piece of end grain. If I take the corner of my paper towel, I can get in there. Make sure it's smeared around. And then we're going to wipe off the excess. Because I can't leave this particular product cannot sit on the surface. I'm only interested in what went down into the pores of the wood. Because if it sits on the surface, it beads up like a well-waxed car. Then becomes a real issue, because then you're going to have to sand those little beads off. Which can be done, but try and eliminate work, not create work. because this is a one coat application, not to go back after it a second time. If you want the multiple coat application, then you got to go to the next, sort of the next thickness up. Since we're going to go ahead and finish the inside, I won't do the rest of the foot just yet. Give this like 2 sprays. I spun at 180 degrees at about 18 to 24 inches away. I just want the mist to land down on it. I don't need to saturate it by any means. Like the old, kind of got to show my age on that one. The old Dippity-Doo commercial, little dab will do ya. Well, that's pretty much the same thing there. Little bit of accelerator goes a long way. All you got to do is start the process, and it'll take over from there. You got to switch back to the other chuck. Don't really need to snap it tight either. But it's a habit. You get into habits and you keep doing the habits. Now, if I can only find it quickly and easily, yeah, there it is. In order to guarantee that I'm not going to stick, because I'm going to put this back in the chuck. This is not totally, it's certainly not dry by any means. Sort of dry to the touch, but not cured. So if I take a little bit of microcrystalline wax and I put it on the inside and the outside of those jaws, any part of that that touches the wood will not stick to the super glue. The super glue does not like wax. Once again, I'll wipe off the excess on that too. Cleans my jaws too while I'm at it. So now we can put this, because we know it didn't leave no marks. So I can put it right back into the chuck. I'm just going to cinch it up just so that it's closed and doesn't wiggle. I'm not going to turn anything, so I don't need any real pressure on it. Go to the inside. Another 2 paper towels. Another little piece of polyester felt. The felt just acts as a little reservoir in there. Keeps more of the glue off of your fingers than anything else. Just wrap it up, fold it over. I got a nice, neat little simple pad, applicator pad. Inside will take less than the outside because we've already filled the grain up, or we filled some of the pores of the wood up from the outside. So the inside will take less material. That would be whichever you do first. Myself, I almost always do the outside first and then the inside. As you can see, that way I can do the whole thing at one time. Because I can't use I guess I could use that pad as long as I put a piece of wax paper or something like that on it. But the chuck, a little bit of wax on the chuck, even the metal chuck jaws, they will not stick very quickly to super glue. And it's only going to be on there for a minute anyhow. That's the inside coated. Like I say, it'll take less material to do the inside than the outside. And then we'll go the whole way around, spreading any out that didn't get spread out. And then we'll flip it over to the dry part. Well, I want this basically to be dry. I don't want any sitting on the surface. Make sure I get to the middle, because the middle is inevitably where you'll get a place that you miss. And that's pretty much it. All I have to do is I have to sign the bottom, and then I'll put a little bit on the bottom, and then give it a buff. I will accelerate this just so I can make sure I can handle it well enough. Right now for me, you know, eastern part of the states, the humidity's starting to come up, and actually it was raining even here a little bit today. So there's a complete bowl, except for this little bit here, and I'll have to, like I say, I'll have to put I put the type of wood and my initials on there, and then I'll just go over that with a little bit of the 3408 as well. And then it's ready to be buffed, which I generally wait till I get a couple of them done before I go to the buffing stage. Get my gloves off before my hands totally gets sweaty enough I can't get them off. Kind of frugal that way. I try not to go through 100 pair of gloves too quickly. You can take them off inside out and then just flip them back around and blow a puff of air in them to make them stand back out. And they're good for another day. Questions, comments? Simple? Simple is good, I think. I'm a simple kind of guy. Tell you what, well, we got that in hand and we're thinking about it because we're going to do another one. Very similar, different kind of wood. Let's see where I have my, because I readjusted these dividers a little bit. Oh, just a little bit bigger, because right there, that diameter is what I would like. I normally don't get super carried away with the actual diameter there for the most part. But in this case, if I want to go from start to finish at one time, where I don't have to go back and true up a tenon, then it's best to have it be the right size from the start. This next piece is going to be a little piece of black locust. It also has some cracks, and it has a little bit of a crack in it there. Don't know. That's actually a crack on it. It's got a multitude of little cracks in it. So we'll see what it does when we start cutting on it. For one, that's that right there. Right there is actually still some of the pith that didn't get taken out. That's always that's the root of all evil, because that's where everything all the cracks radiate from, is the center of the tree. Because the tree tries to shrink to the center. So that's kind of like my mistake. Give myself a little room. I will still try and get it even. Even though I'm going to do it, basically going to do it the same way I just did with the other one. I'm going to true this face up, grab a hold of it with a tenon so I can do all the shaping and all that from the other side. I just find it to be a little bit easier. To me, it makes it it's a little easier, a little quicker. But once again, it's sort of personal preference. Let's see whether this gouge that's seen its better days has any edge left on it. This will be very abusive on the edge because black locust is very, very hard. Lots of silica or something like that in it. The great wood for firewood, if you're a person that would heat your house with firewood or something like that, which my grandmother did at one time when I was much, much younger. And this was kind of some of the wood that we would kind of search out on the farm. And if you saw this stuff with a chainsaw at dusk, so to speak, you could actually see sparks coming off the chain because of the crap that's in it. So we know it's going to do the same thing to our turning tools, of course. So we'll just give ourselves some relief. Our parting tool is grounded at an angle. Give us a nice flat place for the chuck jaws to sit on. Now we will be bringing the tailstock back up again on this one. This one more so than anything because it's got to deal with that knot. It was a tree branch. I elected not to try and break a bandsaw blade today. Because the temptation would be, I mean, granted, at that point it was not, it was still a square block, which doesn't really make any difference, but to try and cut something like that off on the bandsaw, it has no support underneath it. So if I was to stand that up, even though when it actually was half a log, so it was even just just a tiny little edge out here, to try and cut that off, the bandsaw would automatically try and pull it down. And generally when it pulls it down, there's nothing good going to happen, put it that way. It's all bad from there. Nice crack there. We're going to definitely take a fair amount of material. I could probably do that right from the start, from the get-go. There's cracks all over the place right there, little ones. It's sort of a bigger one. This stuff actually was, the guy that gave it to me, he thought I should try it. He likes the grain pattern in the black locust. I personally thought it was a little boring, but he thought it was kind of neat, so I did one or two for him because he gave me the wood. He gave when people give you wood and that way, I always try and repay them with something. One of those pieces is generally going to go back to them, either one or more. So I did one or two of them and I gave them back to him because he donates them to the Forestry Association, does these dinners and whatnot. I'm just going to go down to just a shade more. Is going to get rid of all that pith. You see it's chipping out right there. That's a crack. But I think that's a pretty good place to start. Anyhow, now we got to contend with this tree branch. First order of business, because it's now the end grain is sticking out at me, so I want to cut back across it in one fashion or another, preferably without whacking my fingers on it. Kind of challenging turning because I cannot see it at all as I'm cutting. And I can't spin it real fast because it's out of balance. So we'll just keep whittling away a little bit at a time. Like I say, it is very, very hard. I think we'll get the rest of it from the inside. I can come back out against it, I think. Might be easier to see it that way. I think while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and take away this corner. That's hitting some of that. Also might give me a good idea where it's at. Probably also knocking the edge right off the tool in a hurry. But at least we got down closer to it. Now watch, I did start sewing on it a little bit too. It's going to be another dusty one. I'm going to get rid of the tail stock. Because I'd like to, what I wanted to be able to do is cut in the right direction even though I'm cutting across end grain right there. This way I can put the center post right above it. So I know, now I know where it's at. So did we get rid of the back? Got rid of some of the vibration, not all of it certainly. You can see that we're not getting shavings, really not getting shavings coming off of it. It's almost like a dust. Yeah. And a little drinky. Dust collector back on. Now getting rid of most of that, got rid of most of the unevenness. A little bit further down to go, but we start shaping it. We got to get rid of all the things that we don't want. We don't really want the crack, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get away from that one. Little crack, big crack. Here's where you end up having choices to make. Keep cutting to see whether the crack becomes less, which I think is what we're going to do with it. I could also fill the crack, but if I was to go fill in that crack, then I would be done with this piece tonight, because if I pour super glue down in there, it'll take too long for it to set up in order to continue on turning. And then you'll see a lot of people do that, but 9 times out of 10 I'll have super glue everywhere if I was to do that. So we'll just shrink it down a little bit and see where it goes. Seems like it's getting less, but yeah, it's shrinking in this direction. So probably do I get down maybe to there? Yeah, it's barely there now. So a little bit more. We're gonna have to reduce the height a little bit. It needs to have a foot on it. Uh, it's gonna have a foot on it. I shouldn't say it needs to have a foot on it. It could be a round bottom. I don't normally do a round bottom one this small. I'm going to stop right about there because we know we got to come down from the top, get rid of those cracks and chips, and still a tiny bit left. They would fill in and probably be okay when I finish it. But I'll finish it with the same super glue, but oh, thank you for the sub there, Cody. Just a little smidgen of it still remaining. Actually, still just a tiny little hint of it, but that's going to be good enough. Get rid of this up here. It's going to want to break off. And below the, oh, it's got a little bit left there to get rid of as far as the pith goes. But definitely don't want to leave that tiny little bit of pith at the top of the rim. Just kind of getting space contingency there a little bit. So now that it's much, much smaller, we're going to go to the smaller diameter jaws. And we're going to bring them down to where it completes the circle. And I'm going to reset these two so that we get more of a true circle so that we get to do what we did with the last one and be able to do start to finish in all one shot. We got to reduce the height a little bit right off the bat. And sort of a nice flat surface to be able to mark it at. Wow. Better to be lucky than good, they would say. And we don't really need a very big foot on it, just a little bit of something to lift it up off the table a little bit. That's really all I'm after. So just like our last one, we'll go back to our scraper to do the very bottom. Need this to be concave, but it definitely sits out on the rim. And I should check to make sure it is. And give it our little same little decoration. And the same way in here. Want it to be a true curve from top to bottom, the bottom to top. And this stuff is like hard as a rock, so there's no issue of it. Just looking at my shape right now, it sort of comes down, and there's definitely a little bit of a hump there. That looks better. No kind of torn grain or anything like that. So that's the plus part. Anything kind of boring. I already have sort of a little ramp going up there to that. Let's make sure we're far enough down. And the tool rest back down a little bit. We'll come back in here and pick up our cut from down here. Sort of make that come in a little bit. And then we'll go out to the rim. And now I gotta fix that bottom curve a little bit. Sort of gives it a sort of an OG shape. It's got to be a very smooth transition in there though, which is kind of a little difficult. That scraper, I probably could have a little bit smaller one for that job. It left some humps in there. I can also do the same thing basically with my bow gouge on its side. Some ways it might be easier to use the bow gouge like this to do it. Because now I can look up here where I'm not comfortable enough with the scrapers to do that with. Get rid of that razor blade there. One more little razor blade right there. And I think we're ready to sand away. This one I think we'll be lazy. We'll just power sand. I think I have a clean enough and smooth enough surface there. Also going to switch back to the harder pad, I think. And I'm going to start with 150 rather than 120. I don't really feel any tool marks, but if they're there, we'll just go back to a lower grit and our speed down. This time we are spinning in reverse so that all the dust goes into the dust collector, not into my face. Okay. Next order of business, to get in along there, which I should have done that first. It actually work better if I spun it in forward. A little easier to get into those tight corners. Like I said on the last one, when I'm doing them this way, this is the only really easy time to get to the very bottom of this foot. And get into that crack, the tenant part of it. We're just banking on that I got it set right, that it doesn't put a mark in there. If it does, that just means I have a little bit of extra work when we get to there. I will go the whole way through the grits while I'm here. We got one more to do, and we'll be done. And we can finish power sanding the rest of it. Flip it around, get it finished up. A little bit of random orbit sanding on that very center on the foot. That's spinning very, very slowly. No, 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 no. Reverse. The only other reason I like to sand in reverse so I can see what I'm doing better than I can if I sand in forward. Not to mention it does a whole lot better job dust collection wise. Breathing dust is not our friend. It has some weird lines when it comes around there, but that's probably because I sanded such fine sandpaper in there. You don't see anything that's going to cause me issues, but I always wipe the dirt off. You know, when I left over little bits of grit. I only hint of that crack left, but like I say, when I get to that, the 3408 will cover that up. So we should be good. I shouldn't say cover it up. It'll fill it in, stop it from going any further. We'll go down to size and jaws. I'm fortunate enough to have a couple chucks, so I don't have to switch chucks or switch jaws on them so much. So yeah, that's what I was looking for. About 1/8 of an inch should give me pretty close to a perfect circle there. So the perfect circle will not leave marks. And if they do, we'll just have to cut them off a little bit. But this is actually becoming a very small bowl. Forward. The speed was down, running true. Now we can bring it back up to turning speed. We're going to get rid of this out here because we know we don't want it. Come back to the middle, get ourselves some room to move. Thinking I might give it a little bit of a little bit fatter of a rim than what maybe normally would. We'll make it curve in that direction. And come from the top of the curve. Make that curve come around the corner. Keep coming around the corner and make it a little bit undercut right there. And I'm also going to have to sharpen my tool because I'm leaving marks right there. So it's still plenty thick to make another cut because I'm not happy with this curvature. So I'm going to sharpen that real quick like. Also going to remove a fair amount of the heel because I want to make a short curve. I could also go to a smaller diameter gouge. But we're going to go with this one for the moment. I'm going to remove a little material down here so that my eye can see a little better. You can also do a little shear scrape on that. And we're going to stop and look, see how much work I created. Not too bad. Go down back 1/4 of an inch behind there. But just little, maybe like a little M&M bowl or something like that. As you scoop them out, that little rim will make them curve around into your hand. Is the general idea. I think that's good. I'm judging that by eye. I'm getting my body in a position where I can look left side, right side, because I don't necessarily need to see what the tool is, where the tool is cutting or how it's cutting, because I know it's cutting all right. I can also look over here as it comes around. But I did leave some nasty ridges in there. So I should, yeah, that one will work. The below center. I'm going to do that before I get rid of any more of the middle. Like I said before, it's a very, very gentle touch. Not quite getting up underneath the rim where I want to get, though. We're at about a quarter there. We're fattening up a little bit as we go down, which is fine. I don't mind that. Let me see. You have a smaller. I want to be up just a hair more on that one. And as you see, I'm putting my fingers on the back side. I'm putting, as I was trying to teach one of the people that I was teaching, only put that much pressure on it. That worked. Perfectly clean, no torn grain. So that makes for a very simple sand job. Back down to the hole gouge tool height. Finish out the bottom. And the bottom, of course, can always be a little thicker. Nothing wrong with a little weight in the bottom. Back up here. Make one nice little finishing cut. Nice and slow. Right to the center. Get to the center, we slow down more yet and almost stop. That leaves a little nipple sticking up, which disappears with sandpaper in a heartbeat. Didn't come up quite far enough. Left a little hump. So we get to do that again. I'm going to pick up my cut. Same scenario. Nice, gentle. I want to make the full continuous cut the whole way to the bottom. There's still a tiny ridge up here, but I think if I keep playing with it, I could make it worse. I'm going to raise it to a rest up, give it one little try with the scraper. It's right there. Just go a little bit there. I think that's got it. Got it good enough. I'll keep playing long enough and I'll make it too thin. Yeah, that feels like a continuous curve to me. And I'm kind of the one that counts when it comes right down to it. So that's what we're going to do. Thank you, the curse. I might actually have to go to the sandpaper that's on there, or the sanding disc that's on there is 2 3/8. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Instead of sticking the face shield in front of you, as I'm trying to see what I'm doing. Yeah, I think the actual 2-inch disc is going to work a little better in there. So make a quick switch. I could also sand it by hand, but I'm lazy when it comes to that part. I'd like to do things a little easier, a little quicker. Let's see if I got the right sandpaper out. 150, 180, or 220, 320, 400. I don't have a 180, but that's okay. Wow, that's good. The one club that's around here, because I have actually several that I would say are within an hour of me, something like that. They did a bunch of the wig stands a couple of years ago, and my dad and I did a couple of them. They sort of wanted to add to the challenge, I guess you would call it, and wanted them to be made out of framing material, 2x4 material. Which really makes them challenging. But using that material will teach you a lot. That's the ticket. I was never much of a fan of the scrapers because I was taught from day one to learn to use the cutting tools and you can do a better job. But I don't know. I guess I'm getting lazy in my old age. Or maybe it's the fact that I watch Richard Rappin's videos each week when he comes out with a new one. I am kind of cheap on the scrapers though. They are all just high-speed steel that you buy from Amazon for really pennies on the dollar. But they work. Actually work quite well. Doesn't mean to buy. If you were to buy a scraper of that size, like in good steel, I mean they're close to $100. And to buy something like that and maybe not necessarily like it, or give up on the fact of learning how to use it, that's to me that's kind of a substantial investment. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm gonna in June. That was in June. I'm gonna teach a beginner wood turning class at our local woodcraft. I sort of, I don't know if you want to call it, got suckered into doing some of this, but that's what I'll be using. Will be too simple, because the basic class is to learn to do spindle work. So yeah, if you can cut a 2x4 clean, making simple stuff, snowman or maybe even a little tree or something like that out of a 2x4, then you're learning how to use your tools properly. So the 2x4 can be cut cleanly without a whole lot of without a whole lot of work, as far as I'm concerned. But it does take a bit of practice. I had a guy from our club here, I don't know, probably 2 weeks ago, because he was just getting back into turning, and he says, you need to help me out. And I'm like, okay. I said, but hope you like the smell of pine, because that's what you're going to be turning. And he did. And I showed him the differences between doing the cut properly and improperly. And then he practiced on that for, he was here the best end of about 3 hours or something like that. And then he said he had enough. No, um, that's one of the places that I will draw the line on. I mean, I do most of the time start with, I did have a 600. I mean, I started with 120 on the inside of that just because it gets rid of any of the tool marks in a hurry. But that's pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, that's as low as I'm going to go. If I need to go any lower than that, then I'm going to go back to square one and work on better tool control, sharper tools. But that's just me. That's my view on it. But everybody has their own thing on how they like to do things. And the bottom line is as Jimmy Clues always put it, he says, doesn't matter how you get to the final result, as long as you get to the final result that you want. If that means you had to start sanding with 60 grit or 80 grit sandpaper, then so be it. But so that's it. Inside done, outside done. Now we get to find out whether we put any marks in with the chuck. I'm hoping not, but we shall see. Teeny tiny little marks. So it could be just a shade bit smaller. Because unfortunately, that one should work. The real question is, will the shark gels grab that one? And don't do that. Put these in it. Yeah. So it will grab that. So I still don't want to leave any marks. So what I have is a piece of, I'm going to put a piece of paper towel in there. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm pretty fortunate on that. Not even close. I have 4. Yeah, I have 3 of the VM120s, and this is the 100. The 100, I actually have more jaws for the 100 than I do anything else. Oh, close enough, I think. I try, and there again, these are about, I forget what size they are, to be quite honest with you. Um, and it actually has the shark jaws on it, which I don't know. I'm still kind of out in the court's sort of still in session on the shark jaws are nice for some stuff, but they also to grip a tenant like that, they actually have a little bit of flex to them. If you were to be one of them people that really cranks hard on them, but they do some other things really really well. And we'll see if we can do something dumb here. Yeah, well, I was at a public sale. This actually goes back a couple years from now, but and the guy that was there was a lot of woodworking stuff there, which I didn't necessarily really buy any of the woodworking stuff, so to speak. But he had a lathe. He was a turner as well. He actually had a robust lathe. But he had that's for the two 120s. I already had a 120. I had the 100 and the 120. I do have an old Nova G3 that really never gets out of the drawer. But I had 2 sets of jaws for the 120. And like you said, you're constantly sort of changing jaws. But I mean, it works. But when I was at the sale and I was able to buy, I mean, I think I still spent about 150 or $175 a piece for them, which is cheap, seeing as how they're not sure what they are right now. They're $350 for the 120 with jaws on them. So I was able then to kind of graduate a little bit and not have to change jaws on them. And one other thing the guy had, and I really don't know that I'll ever use them. I got a set of jaws. I'd have to look to see that has it on the box. Grips 8 inches to 9 1/8. Expands 8 7/8 to 10 1/2. They're big, and I'm like, it's kind of one of them situations. There was a guy that was sort of bidding against me on some of that stuff, and he sort of in a roundabout way, pissed me off because he really wanted to. He also had one of the VM100s too, but there was a man and a woman. They were together, but they weren't in togetherness as to husband and wife or anything like that. I don't think. And she was just getting started in the turning, and the guy was telling her, he said, "Oh, they're really good trucks," and I think she had a smaller lathe even, but he said if you could get the VM100 at a good price, it was well worth buying. And I just kind of left her have it. But when they got to the 120s, like I say, the guy that was kind of being a doo-wad, trying to buy everything he could dirt cheap. So sale, I'm always looking at those people because they're just buying something to resell it. Yeah, would be quite honest with you, I have no idea what I'll ever use them giant sized jaws for. But it kind of was one of them things where the price was right. I don't necessarily do that terribly much big work, primarily because I don't necessarily want my work to stick around forever. I do a couple craft shows a year, so if I was to make something that I needed an 8-inch tenon on it or an 8.5-inch recess or something on it. I mean, you're talking about something that's quite big. I just I don't really don't do that, so just as easy to stick with the smaller stuff. Because when you go big, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have a bowl over there. It's over on the shelf that one of these first Saturdays I'm going to have to finish. But right, yeah. I mean, he does a lot of little stuff. I mean, the little stuff will go quicker than any of the big stuff, unless it's somebody that has a really big house. They may want a fruit bowl or something like that. Um, I did some of them at Christmas time last year for one of my wife's friends, and when she asked about the fruit bowl, my wife's like, "Well, let me see what he has," and she had me go look, and I'm like, "Well, yeah, we have this one. I have this one here," and they were, I don't know, 14 inches in diameter, something like that, by like 5. So they were a nice size, simple, sort of a simple shape to them, nothing spectacular. Fruit bowl, and she's like, "Yeah, that's." She showed it to her, and she's, "Yeah, that's perfect. I'll take 5 of them." I'm like, "Excuse me?" I'm like, "Christmas is in like 3 weeks away or 4 weeks away." I'm like, "You want them for Christmas?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, let's go down and take inventory of what we have that's already dry." But I did manage to get 5 of them done, but they're a pain. I don't know, they're different. My finish, Parfix 3408, slow setting CA glue. If you've ever heard of it, maybe you didn't, maybe you did. I am actually a distributor of it, but that's not why I use it. I use it because I like it. And I became a distributor of it because it's not an easy thing to get a hold of. It's pretty much sold by private distributors. I think there is a wood turning company up in New York State now that's carrying it in their store. Single coat finish, slow setting, no odor, no smoke and paper towels like normal CA glue would do, and it has a 40-second time delay, which gives you the time you need to do it on something other than a pen. So I wiped on a liberal coat, want it to soak in. Oh, there you go. Yeah, then you don't got to worry about them people that want something big. My dad has that lathe. Actually, that's what the woodcraft store has that we teach on. They're a little, they're a nice small lathe. I'm gonna leave it at that. They're certainly not a lathe to do anything of really big size. 6, 8-inch bowls, do fine. Even the 8-inch bowls, because I'm used to this, which has considerably more horsepower. But I just have to slow down a little bit, and they work just fine. So that's our outside done. Now give it a little activation. I spray it about 18 to 24 inches away, above, and I just do basically I do a sweeping motion down across, let the mist land on it. Their activator is also no odor. How big is the extension on them? Or I guess, is there multiple size extensions for them? So we gotta get rid of that. My dad just has the original, no extension. Well, that would be nice. That probably gives you the 20 more inches. Does that give you enough room to be able to slide it to the end and still do a bowl with, say, 16-inch handle on it or something like that without hitting tailstock? That's kind of where I'm at. Not that one. Big one. Yeah. Well, that's some of that stuff was like half the battle. Drilling the hole in a tool handle and things like that. That's that's kind of where it's at. But I probably do that ass backwards to what you do. What and most what a lot of people I've seen. If I'm going to drill something long, like a tool handle that would be 16 or 18 inches long, the drill chuck's gone in the head, and I just use the live center to advance it into that, rather than the other way around of trying to hold it up here in a chuck or whatever and drill from the opposite end. It actually works quite easy. But it's kind of opposite of what most people I've ever seen do it. I think Cindy Droz showed that one time how she drills the handles in it, and I'm like, well, that makes more sense. But then it doesn't, you're not trying to drill, or really not trying to drill necessarily a super precise hole, but it works. Inside done. Like I said, inside will take less material because it's already sealed up from the outside. Yeah, I understand that. Yep. Especially when it comes to the chucks. Now that the chuck makers, manufacturers, I'm not sure about. I think even Nova has gone that route now too. All the Vic marks I have actually have a threaded insert in them. It's a very good threaded insert compared to. I'm not trying to sound like I'm gonna pick on your Nova, but the Nova insert that I have in the one down that's in the drawer is nothing compared to the Vic mark. The Vic marks are machine threads. They're very fine. Um, but you're looking at the difference in price is probably almost 3 times. So, but now they have gone to I think everything I've seen of lately is direct threads. There's no more buying of inserts. So yeah, if you had your lathe, then you're going to stick with that size. There it is. You can zoom out so you can actually see it. There's another little guy. Yeah. Well, see, that's kind of one of the things that I have never done. I mean, I have the mandrels to do. Well, most I don't know that there's a direct thread pen mandrel, but like the bottle stopper mandrels and stuff like that. I've never. When I bought the first one, I bought a Morris taper. That way I could take it anywhere I go. Trying to think what else would be. That's one of the big ones. I usually will get that stuff in the Morris taper rather than the threaded one. Probably because that's the way I started out. And I don't have to be concerned about it. Like that's one of the classes I'm going to teach later on in the summer will be a ice cream scoop, which I'll use the Niles threaded. If only I knew. Wow, it's actually on a piece. Yeah, that's what you're talking about, the Niles threaded stuff, threaded to do handles and such things as that. But yeah, I bought the Morse taper because that way I didn't have to be concerned down the road that I was going to have to buy something else or an adapter. Because I really don't. I have the adapter to go from your lathe. I did buy that to go from the 1 inch to inch and a quarter. Right. That's what I did. I have the 1 inch to inch and a quarter because our club goes to an event every year, um, and I would rather use my own chucks. I'd rather be using my own chuck to be teaching these classes. For one, and you're probably in that same boat since you've got the Novas. This one is backwards for me because my Vic marks are clockwise to tighten, counterclockwise to loosen. These are just the opposite. And that's what they have over at the Woodcraft store. And it's like, every time I put something on a chuck over there, I have to stop and think about what I'm doing, so that I don't loosen something and have some sort of a student or whatever send something flying because of something I did. Put it that way. Where's the other one? So there's our two little guys from tonight. We could go back to switch back to the scene. It's straight overhead. The new ones are clockwise, right? Like the supernovas. They've gone to that route. I think I saw somebody using one and it looked like that was the case. Because there again, the new ones go righty tighty. That G3 right there is probably 20 years old. Yeah. So there's our two little bowls. They're both complete except for signing and little 3408 on the bottom of them. And then some other day this week or maybe next weekend or whatever, then they get buffed with product called Vonex. Comes out of the UK. It's a, it's a different buffing compound. You can use the white diamond and carnauba wax as well. The Vonex does a little, the Vonex is actually designed to buff plastics and lacquers, so it does a better job on both cases. If you finish something with lacquer or you finish it like this, it seems to do a little bit better job. But yeah, one other thing to show you, and then we are going to call it a day. Tomorrow is a work day for me. Ooh, it's starting to turn white. Get these two out of the road. Get some cracks too. This is the piece I did. I did this Wednesday evening just for the heck of it. Started out 3 inches wide, something like that. This is end grain. It's showing some cracking, but it's got some really nice color. And it is cedar. It's red cedar. But I see some of the sort of chalky stuff's coming out of it, which is the moisture. But we'll see what it does. So it's all said and done. Kind of a fun project in a way. Cedar's notorious for having all the branches in it, which doesn't help with these cracks are starting to get bigger, but we'll see what it does because it's plenty wet. It's actually thicker than I would like it to be. It's pushing probably closer to the half-inch mark. But it was so cotton pick and flexible, even though I only went down just a little bit at a time, that it just didn't want to cooperate. So I just left it at that and see what it does. I have more of this cedar log, and probably next Saturday I'm going to get more yet. But I've never done. I actually got some juniper, or no, they were. I forget what it was. Some sort of a shrubbery. Oh, what's the one that's popular over in the UK that they like to turn? I can't think of it now. Rain fade. Um, but then somebody made a comment about some of that stuff being sort of unhealthy, the dust being unhealthy to you, and I just kind of left them alone. The other one that I was playing with, it didn't get very far with it, was I watched a YouTube with that Linda Ferber, and she made some mushrooms and then carved them with the Fordham carver, and then did some dry brush painting on them. So I made this little guy the other night too. Not quite sure, not quite happy with the shape in the middle. I think it's a little fat, but I started with the carver up there, and my wife is a decorative painter, so I'll get her to do the painting. Yeah, well that's what I got was you, but I didn't. These wouldn't be a Japanese yew. These would be, I guess, American yew or whatever. Like I say, the logs are still sitting down behind my retaining wall because I didn't. Yeah, that was one of the things I read that you had to be very careful with that stuff, and I'm like, I don't need to end up sick with because of some sort of wood that I turned, but yeah, this is ash too. I probably picked the hardest piece of wood I could find to make a mushroom and then carve on it, but um, we'll see. But I should have another one of them things of should have been smart enough to have left the tenon on it so that I could use. I have a carving stand for in the lathe, one of Trent Bosch's carving stand, where I could bring it over here and have the dust collection right there at it. But like I said, I wasn't thinking quite as long along those lines. Although I could, if I can find it. I just played with it just a little bit the other night just to see how well it would do. That on that side. Really? Oh, I guess I don't want to turn any of it. Not going the right way. Oh, there it goes. I had it too tight. So I guess that'll open big enough. Huh. Well, I've never heard that. That's interesting. Yeah, the white-tailed deer, they seem to eat anything and everything. So that would work. Anything wrong with these carving stands is now the work is way up here. And I guess I could bring it down further. Maybe spin it around some fashion. Something like that. Yeah, that would work. Huh. Yeah, that would work. That doesn't matter that I put chuck or jaw marks even down here because the whole thing would get textured. The Fordham grinder is just a little bit too cumbersome to move where I got it at. But I will have to do that. And then give it a whole bunch of goofy sort of texturing. So that would work. Still would have been easier if I'd left a tenon on it. That's good. Always seems to be helpful when you talk some dumb stuff out. Now, like on a dog, are you talking about them eating the green? I don't know what you would call it, the green bushy part, or the actual like wood bark or something like that? Huh. Now you got my curiosity. I have to look that up. Hmm. I wouldn't think a dog would eat it, but my daughter has a dog that will eat about anything. But I wouldn't. I would think that they would be. I would think that would be kind of bitter myself. Okay. Well, that's weird. You would think the berry would be toxic too. I would think the berry would actually be more toxic than the um the leaves. That's kind of weird. Hmm. Okay. Well, before I go to try and find somebody to raid into, and I do this both, you're on Twitch, I do this both on YouTube and Twitch at the same time. And this would make number 54, 55 on YouTube. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that would make sense. Um, but like I say, there's 54, 55 live turning stuff on YouTube as well under Kapps Kreations. If you watch it under YouTube and you would hit the subscribe button, it would be greatly appreciated. But right now we'll end that and then we'll go see if we can find somebody on Twitch.